Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar that'll help you plan and get ready for the retirement of Workgroup PDM. Phasing out a business system just doesn't happen by itself. It's going to take some planning. You're going to need to get familiar with the new system that's going to take its place. Today we're going to talk about that new system, which is SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard and SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional. We're also going to give you some strategies to migrate your data from Workgroup PDM to the new system. Further, we'll talk about some strategies and services that Digital Dimensions and Decide Solutions can provide you. When you're ready to upgrade to SOLIDWORKS 2017, you'll see a very important message from the development team that this is the last release of SOLIDWORKS Workgroup PDM, and to contact your VAR to get a strategy in place to migrate to SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard or PDM Professional. There's several reasons why we'd like you to contact us. The most important reason is that we'd like to make sure that you have all the tools to successfully move from one system to the other. We'd also, if you decide to go with PDM Standard, we need to release and provide you with serial numbers so that you can activate those licenses. Although this is the last release for Workgroup PDM in 2017, we'll still provide technical support for 3 previous releases, meaning when 2018 is released, you'll still have support for Workgroup PDM 2016 and 2017. So what are your options? You could obviously do nothing, or you could migrate to PDM Standard or PDM Professional. SOLIDWORKS is providing PDM Standard to anybody that's using Workgroup PDM today. Let's start talking about the setup and the configuration. The first step is to start thinking about the migration, and do you want to make any process improvements? You should also consider, do you want to start to manage any additional document types that were not managed in Workgroup PDM? You should also think about what types of attributes that should be mapped. SOLIDWORKS PDM has a data card which makes it really easy to capture information about the documents that can be used for searching or for stamping information onto the drawing or inside the SOLIDWORKS files. Think about your revision scheme and has that changed over time. You want to start thinking about the quality of the data and the processes that you have in place today and how that compares to the historical data. If your current process looks different than your historical process, special configuration requirements may be needed. Since PDM Standard is built on the same technology as PDM Professional, the architecture is very similar. One exception is that PDM Standard requires SQL Express versus PDM Professional will not run on SQL Express. But don't worry, you don't have to purchase Microsoft Client Access licenses. We'll include those with your purchase of PDM Professional. PDM Professional also includes the scalability to install a web server. Some of the commonalities are that both PDM systems use the same Solid Network License Manager. This is a floating license model, meaning all licenses are borrowed from the license server when they're in use and they're returned when they're not being used. Both systems use an archive server to store the physical files, and they both use the same client application. Let's take a closer look at the PDM architecture and how it's commonly configured as well as the roles of the PDM application. The Network License Manager manages the license. The database server manages the metadata. It controls the permissions of the project folders and project files, maintains all the SOLIDWORKS references, and indexes all the document information for fast searching, among other things. The archive server manages the physical files. When the file is needed, it's sent from the archive server over to the client machine where it's opened up in SOLIDWORKS. The engineer makes the change. When the change is completed, the file is checked back in and stored back on the archive server where it can be securely managed. The PDM application is integrated into a familiar Windows Explorer interface as shown down here in the bottom right, as well as directly integrated into the task pane inside of SOLIDWORKS. A common configuration for a small business using PDM Standard will be to consolidate all the components on a single server as shown in this diagram. Here the database server, the network license manager, and the archive server are all on the same machine. But all 3 components can be on their own independent machine. In this diagram here, we split up the database server and the archive server. The SQL server can take advantage of more RAM and a faster CPU, versus the archive server may require faster disk speed. Many small businesses are using the same network configuration with PDM Professional. They may have decided to go to PDM Professional because it solves a particular business problem for them. PDM Professional also provides a web server interface. This allows web clients to access the data through the intranet or through the internet. Another configuration is to replicate the archive servers. Here we have Site A and Site B, and all the data, the physical files on the archive server, can be synchronized across all sites. When you're building your data migration plan, consider, do you need the complete history migrated? Do you need every version and every revision? Do you need every project? Or could you live with just the latest revision and a subset of the projects? Also, when do you want to migrate? What does your budget look like? Do you want to pay somebody like Digital Dimensions at Decide Solutions to automate the migration? Do you prefer to have your own guys put their own labor and burden into a manual migration process? I'd like to jump into PDM now and show you what it looks like to configure the system as well as using an upfront manual process to migrate the data. Let's start with the administration tool. This is very similar to the Workgroup PDM Vault Admin. A benefit over Workgroup PDM is that SOLIDWORKS PDM allows multiple vaults. Here I'm going to select my PDM Professional Vault because I do not have SQL Server Express installed. This will be the new name of my vault. This will be the database name that gets created. There's no need to manually create a database. Let the system take care of that for you. This is the name of my license server. If you have a license server that doesn't appear here, just select Add and type in your license server name. A variety of date formats to choose from. And I'm going to go ahead and use the default admin password. There's a couple of predefined configurations. These are sort of like templates. These are going to define the workflows in the system as well as the data card, among other things. As you can see, the quick start includes a couple of data cards, search cards, bill of materials. As you can see, in a few steps, we can create a new vault. As you can see, I don't have any project files or folders at this point. I'd like to go back to the administration tool and configure the system. You can see the various nodes listed vertically here. If I'd like to add a user, it's as simple as right-clicking to add a user. If I'd like to add a group, I can add a group. Let's look at the quick start data card. Here we can see this comes with a number and description, project number and project name, but this is configurable, and this is where you may need us to help you configure the system so that it captures the right information when you like to capture it. The Quick Start workflow has a simple sign-off process. As documents are initiated, they're checked into the work in process state, then routed to the pending approval state. If the document is rejected, it's routed back to the work in progress state, and the process is repeated. After they're approved, they'll end up at the release state, and a complete audit trail is captured. I went ahead and modified the Quick Start workflow for a couple data migration strategies. The first is to capture all historical revisions from Workgroup PDM, and the second is to capture only the latest revision from Workgroup PDM. If I plan to capture all revisions for Workgroup PDM, I want to have a transition here that can capture every variation of the revision scheme. Versus if I plan to only migrate the latest revision, I can route all documents through this transition. Let's take a look at revision B and how this is done. Here I have an action to increment the revision, and the counter is set to increment to revision B here. Versus over here with the latest revision, there's no action to be triggered, and the revision counter is not set. What I'll leverage here is the set revision feature inside of SOLIDWORKS PDM and actually set the revision to match the SOLIDWORKS custom property once it is in the release state. As we start to migrate our data, I first want to take a look at the folder structure or project structure in Workgroup PDM. At the top level, there's a project folder, and then a project folder that contains all the associated documents. In SOLIDWORKS PDM, I went ahead and mirrored that project structure by creating a projects folder and our ball valve folder. Additionally, I filled out attributes associated with that project, such as the project number and project name. The SOLIDWORKS data card will inherit these values and create these custom properties inside of the SOLIDWORKS documents. Next, I'm going to take you through a manual migration process to migrate each and every revision from revision A to revision B to revision C. If I select the Document Information tab here, I can see that this assembly has an A, B, and C. This is a very manual process that could be automated with a migration tool in service from Digital Dimensions. The process starts with grabbing the first revision and copying all the files into SOLIDWORKS PDM. A couple notes here. I am including the drawings when I check out the file, as well as retrieving the as-built references. Let's grab our ball valve assembly in the first revision and copy that to our working directory. Now I can either do a save as or a pack and go, or copy and paste the files from within Windows Explorer into SOLIDWORKS PDM. I'm going to use the pack and go option as it grabs all the drawing references. Let's set our Save To folder within PDM. So you can see 6 files have been added to our vault. Let's go ahead and select our drawing, and we can see the custom property has been set to A, and the files remain checked out by the admin. Let's go ahead and check in our drawing. It should attach all associated references to top-level assembly, their parts, and their drawings. As a good practice, it's good to check that all the references are maintained inside of PDM. Now we want to transition that file to the release status. Let's select our transition called Rev A. When we look at the History tab now, we can see that the document was created, transitioned to the Work in Progress, and then from the Work in Progress to the release date and set to Revision A. You can also see this using the Get Revision tab, that the document is at Revision A, or using the Version tab. Essentially now we have to repeat this process for every revision. The first step is to transition the files back to the Work in Progress state. Then check out the files. Let's go back to SOLIDWORKS, close our document, and grab Revision B. And overwrite the files in our Workgroup PDM working folder. The files are checked out here, so we have write access to these files, and we'll be able to write the new file set, Revision B, over top of the existing files at Revision A. Let's go ahead and check these files in. And let's look at the custom property again. It's B. That looks good. So let's go ahead and transition using Revision B. Let's look at the history, and we can see that we're now at that Revision B at the release date. To get to Revision C, the process would be the same. The next example will demonstrate how to migrate the latest revision and set the revision counter appropriately. I'm going to start by cleaning up these files I've already migrated. And going back to SOLIDWORKS, let's check out our latest revision. And use Pack and Go again to copy these files and the associated drawings into SOLIDWORKS PDM. And we can see that the custom property is C. Let's check in the file. And transition the file using the migrate latest transition. Looking at the history, we can see the files have been transitioned from the work in process state to the release state, but the revision counter has not been set. For that, we'll use the set revision command, which will synchronize the revision tag with the custom property revision. The set revision feature can be found on the modify pull-down menu. This is a permission that does need to be enabled, but at the user or group level, as well as the workflow state level. I'm going to select all the files. Here we can see the next revision value. We can also see the value on the data card. We have an option here to also update the data card if needed. Let's right click again and set all new revision values to the data card value. Now we can see the revision will be stamped C, which matches the data card value. Looking at the history again now, we can see that the revision has been stamped to C. I hope that gives you an idea of what a manual data migration may look like if you plan to take that project on yourself, whether that's migrating all of the historical revisions or the latest revision. And as a friendly reminder, Digital Dimensions can help you by providing implementation service, whether that's software installation, training, system configuration, including a complete data migration strategy. For the next steps, I would encourage you to reach out either to myself or your account manager to get more information on PDM administration training, or to set up a meeting where we can help you determine what is the best system and data migration strategy for you. Thank you for attending our Planning for Workgroup PDM Retirement webinar today.